we'll get started. I will go through some general housekeeping notes. So as I'm going through those items, please continue to add your names to the chat for attendance taking and attendance purposes. And we'll get started here momentarily. And I do want to say thank you again for everyone for joining us today on your volunteer time for our New Mix Project Advisory Committee. This is our New Mix PAC meeting 3B. So we are continuing the series of our milestone 3 meetings. I'm continuing from our last meeting. Those of you who are joining by telephone, I don't see anyone currently, but I will take a second to ask for those joining from telephones to state their names. And just as a quick reminder, general reminder, this meeting is being recorded. So if you do choose to, turn on your camera, we will consider that as your consent for using your likeness in the recording. And, as this is a virtual presentation, I just ask that everyone remain muted until the conversational and question portion of the presentation begins. We are using Zoom, so all those features, such as raising your hands and other reactions, are available to you. So you can raise your hand if you have a question at any times, and for when I ask for your interactions. And with that noted, again, the chat function is available to you all throughout the presentation. And when we get to a good stopping place, I'll make sure to take note of that question and answer it. So today we do have a couple of speakers, the same as our last meeting. We have our urban design lead, Katie Tice, and our deputy project manager, David Schweitzer, and myself as the facilitator. And now that I'm done with those general housekeeping notes, I don't see anyone joining from telephone at this moment. If anyone pops on, I will pause very generally. But let's get into the presentation. So here's today's agenda. At today's meeting, we will review some of the information that we have gone over at the last meeting, starting with our Pell process overview and the existing conditions overview. We'll do a reminder of our urban design preliminary approach, and then we'll get into the universe of alternatives with an introduction to the features of our replacement alternatives that we have identified so far. We will be presenting a lot of information, so please bear with us. There will be opportunities to provide comments and ask questions throughout the presentation. And as always, feel free to put any questions in the chat. And once we get to a good stopping point, one of my moderators will be alerted, and we will address that question and comment. So this familiar figure on the screen is our Pell screening process. It is how we are intending to find a potential solution to the Mixmaster interchange through our Pell study. It will work like the funnel, and what we are anticipating on doing is dismissing any unreasonable alternatives, anything that's fatally flawed, that's are identified through these levels. And we are looking to find a range of reasonable alternatives. And what we are also calling those are Pell recommendations. Today, zooming in, I want to focus on the items that are on the screen. As a group, we have gone through the analysis needs and deficiencies study and that report that identifies the existing conditions and deficiencies that exist in our study area. We have gone through our preliminary purpose and need, which also includes those transportation-related goals and objectives. We have incorporated the input received thus far from you all PAC members, also other members of the public, and we will, in the near future, meet with agencies and get their input and insight as well. Through the identification of all these items, we have been developing our universe of alternatives, and that's what we have been presenting on these past few meetings. The universe of alternatives has been developed. Through that, through the identification of all these items that we have gone through as a team, and we will conclude this introduction to the universe of alternatives today. Before we get into the universe of alternatives, we'll do a quick review. This existing conditions video is the same video you saw last week. David will add some commentary, but we will go through this quickly just as a quick reminder of the project area and what we're looking at here. So David.
All right. Good morning, everybody. So we're looking here at the aerial. We have 84 running left to right across, and then we have Route 8 and the Naugatuck River, basically coming from the bottom of the page heading up. Now, as we pull in, and we're going to be setting up pretty much here looking north. So there as we go, we see the Riverside Cemetery. Then we have going from left to right. Then we have the Route 8 stack structure. We have Naugatuck River. We have Jackson Street, and then we have the railroad. You can see the landmarks of Union Station and Waterbury Hospital in the background. As you see 84, the stack structure running right through the middle of the screen here. And then we also have that ridge line on the west. And then as we pull in tighter into the interchange, start to see more of focusing in on the core and see the verticality of the interchange here as we keep pulling in on this. A quick reminder here that we do have our main lines, but then we also have the system ramps, which are the ramps that connect the main lines, which are Route 8 and I-84, and/or we have the service ramps, which connect the main lines to the city, or vice versa, the city to these main lines. So just a quick reminder of the levels that we have out here, with the local roads being down at the lowest level, and with 80 and stacked 84 representing the two higher levels that we have. So altogether, we have 4 levels that we do talk about as we go through our presentation. Then just that quick reminder on the pieces of the bridges, both the superstructure, which is the steel, and the decks, and then also the substructure, which includes the piers and the abutments. And here we get a view of the bridge deck, and we get a few of the system movements coming here as 84 eastbound is coming towards us. And then the video turns and spins back to the south, so we can look at the interchange from this view, from more of an aerial view, looking back down to the south, and you can see the system ramps there off to the left with the going over the Naugatuck River, and we can see the Riverside Cemetery on the right side of this view.
Okay, so just to touch on urban design, I know at the last meeting I did get to briefly touch on this, but want to kind of reiterate some of those points. And our preliminary approach here lays out tactics that we want to utilize in our design. As the engineering design is going on, we want to consider urban design and how these approaches can help us achieve that overarching vision that we've spoke about. Our approach is broken into 2 major thematic areas, places and spaces, which can be broken down into tactics such as open space and smart development. And the idea here is that places and spaces can generate enlivened public use around the infrastructure. We can activate abandoned and underutilized spaces. We can generate future economic development and strengthen connection to the waterfront. And We also are looking at this in terms of connecting corridors. So not just connecting, the highway system, but connecting corridors throughout the community. And this can be broken down into safe and active routes, as well as enlivening the underpasses and overpasses. So some of the ideas behind that is that we can create a connective tissue through our neighborhoods and throughout the city through corridors. We can accommodate many users through safe and accessible multimodal streets. We can connect people to key destinations, including the historic downtown, wider transportation networks to the waterfront. And we can also create unique and site-specific installations, at places such as underpasses and overpasses to create a greater sense of place and identity in Waterbury. So to note again, we really see this project as an opportunity to activate spaces, reconnect communities, and we want to see how we can support the many other ongoing plans and proposals that have been put out for Waterbury. And we want the urban design concept to show how this project can help achieve some of those plans. But with that diagram on the right, it's just really important to note that some of those urban design elements are or could be part of CONDOT's purview and the purview of this job to implement, but it's also a shared responsibility. And we will look to others such as NVCOG, the city, developers even, to maybe help ultimately achieve that that total vision. And that's once again indicated by this diagram on the right. So, Naomi?
Thank you, Katie. So now we're going to get into our universe of alternatives with the replacement alternatives. And just as a quick reminder, the study team identified 23 alternatives within the universe of alternatives. We defined these alternatives by looking at the program needs, what we've gone through as a group, those constraints, considerations, and challenges. We looked at preliminary and very high level improvements to the urban design as Katie just presented. And finally, the study team also consolidated either similar or incomplete alternatives as well where appropriate. This resulted in 4 groups of the alternatives being identified, and collectively, those 4 groups create our universe of alternatives. At the last meeting, we presented the no-build alternate travel nodes and the rehabilitation alternatives. Today, we will be focusing and providing you an introduction to the features of our replacement alternatives. Okay, with that in mind, at the last meeting, we went through those key factors for identifying rehabilitation and replacement alternatives. Just focusing on the replacement alternatives, we looked at our needs and the purpose that we have identified within this project area. So those needs include the structural deficiencies, geometric deficiencies, and operational deficiencies. And what we are looking to do is to improve those conditions. So improving the bridge conditions, improving the roadway geometry, and improving the traffic operations as well. Looking at some of these examples that are on the screen. And again, just as a quick reminder, the replacement alternatives allow for more opportunities to incorporate these improvements, since we would mostly be constructing new structures or looking at different ways to look at solutions. The replacement alternatives just really allow us to look at a broader scope. So with that in mind, we have broken down the replacement alternatives into features, and those features are what we will be presenting on today. And there are 3 main feature categories that we will present today, and that have been developed and incorporated into defining our replacement alternatives. So the first category includes the I-84 and Route 8 alignments. And what we mean by that is either moving these alignments north, south, east, west, or keeping them in kind, so on their existing alignment. We also looked at a bypass option, which means that the main line would be constructed on an entirely new alignment. And then we also looked at potentially shifting the Naugatuck River, which would mean that we would still maintain the capacity of the Naugatuck River, but this would allow us to not impact and not require the construction of and taking away of the river as it currently exists. We also looked at unique solutions, and those solutions include tunneling portions of the main line. And then the second category we looked at are systems connections. That is how I-84 and Route 8 connect with each other. That means full or partial connections. And then finally, we looked at the local connectivity, looking at those interchange, those on and off ramps into the city of Waterbury and onto the highway, frontage road systems, and collector distributor roads. As we get into this presentation, we will provide you with more examples, and this will all make more sense, but just wanted to provide you with this quick introduction. So for the universe of alternatives and the replacement alternatives, we identified 17 replacement alternatives. Those features that I just went through, as you look at these, the titles of these 17 alternatives, you can see how those features kind of align with the names. At the completion of this meeting, in my typical post-meeting email from myself, within that email, you will receive a packet of the complete alternatives with full descriptions of not only these replacement alternatives, but the entire universe of alternatives that has been developed thus far. That packet will provide you with a little bit more information. You can look at it on your own time, provide any comments. If you have any questions, you can also ask us any questions about that. But I did want to note that this will be sent out to all PAC members at the completion of this, after this meeting in my post-meeting email. Okay. So you probably did not think that you'd be taking a class this morning, but in order to go through these features, I'd like to provide you with a bit of background on highway design, and we're just going to start with those alignments. So on the right here, we have a general graphic. I'm going to break this graphic down because we will be using it throughout this presentation, and I'll go through this with you. So we have 84 horizontally here, and then we have Route 8 vertically there, and underneath that grid represents our local roadway. And then through the city of Waterbury, we have the Naugatuck River. So when we're talking about 84 and Route 8 alignments, we were really talking about moving 84 north or south of its existing alignment. And for Route 8, we're talking about moving it east or west. As David explained in the existing conditions video, there's some challenges here on the western side of the river with the ridge, which really constrain any option of moving Route 8 west. But we did, have to look at it. And then finally, unique solutions, that means tunneling portions of the main line. It could, look something along the lines of this, but these are what we are looking at when we talk about alignments. And great job, everyone, get an A+, so easiest class ever. This map that's on your screen is how we will be looking at the features and breaking them down. And I just want to, again, highlight some of these constraints that we have identified within our study area. So on your screen is what we call a plan view. It's kind of what you see when you use Google Maps. And this is, the city of Waterbury in the heart of our study area. We have the Naugatuck River and Mad Rivers running right through our study area. And then again, we have this ridge line coming in on the western side of the river. We also have the 84 going through horizontally and Route 8 here vertically, and then also the railroad that's going also within this project area. When we look at the built conditions, we have a couple of districts that we want to be aware of. These districts that we are highlighting are districts that the city of Waterbury is planning to and continue to revitalize, and that is the Freight Street District, the Central Business District, and Brass Mills Commons. We want to be, aware of that, keeping, in mind that those exist. as well as, other neighborhoods and other communities that exist within the area. In addition to the neighborhoods, we do know that there are environmental justice populations here as well. There's also Riverside Cemetery, which is very close to the interchange, and we want to highlight that as well. It is on the National Register of Historic Places, and we need to be very cognizant of that property as well. And in addition, there's parks, and I mentioned neighborhoods and residential areas throughout our project area. And I do want to note that there are several hazardous sites with some past polluted soils, and we need to be cognizant from that. That is just from historical industry existing within the study area, and that does limit some of our options. And then finally, in the mind of the city of Waterbury, we are cognizant of the ongoing plans and studies that are going. We do know that the Naugatuck River Greenway is in its early processes of being looked at within this area, and we are cognizant of that and other parks and other plans. We will be looking at the map in this, more basic condition, so it gets a little bit more easy to digest. And I'll let David take it over because he will get into the features now, beginning with the alignment options for Route 8. So David.
Hey, Naomi, just
before we get into this, do we want to, I see we were joined by somebody on a phone call, 203-757-7479. So I don't know if they want to identify themselves before we continue.
Yeah, hi, Martin Sprain, president of the Waterville Community Club. I've been on the line. I don't have any Zoom on my computer. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Scott, did you have anything to add?
No, I was just going to mention the same thing that David did. So also
Great, thank you.
Scott and I share a brain at times. So, okay, so welcome everybody. And as Naomi was pointing out, there are a lot of challenges, considerations, and that were in front of the design team here as we started laying out these alternates. So what you will see when this package is sent to you by Naomi, it will be the 17 alternates that that we did come up with. There was a lot in front of the design team that we went through. And there were a lot of features that we're going to focus on now that were really common throughout all of these alternates. And the one thing that is common is, and I know it's been touched on before, is that something can, a certain feature can go through several alignments and the features can be moved around a bit if, as they are acceptable or they work well. So that's something you'll notice as you go through these alternates. But first off, we're going to start with the alignments for Route 8. There's several that we looked at. First off, anytime you look at something, you got to look at replacing it in kind, but then it's a challenge of how do you maintain that traffic and replace it. The next thing we looked at is unstacking it and seeing if we could fit both bounds on the west side of the Naugatuck River. Very constrained in space though. Next option we would look at is moving northbound to the east side, but maintaining the southbound on the west side of the river. Another option would be to move both bounds over to the east side of the river, but notice that we're bringing this back in, avoiding the Freight Street district. But then also as we're going through these, another option we have to look at is moving both bounds onto the east side of the river, and they do end up going through the Freight Street district, as this provides a better alignment, makes it a little more constructible, but it's a feature that we need to look at, even though we know, that is a very strong area that the city is focused on. So then as we continue, another option that we'd look at is we look to maintain Route 8 on the west side, as we had talked about previously, unstacked. But even though we're constrained by space, what we look to do is possibly shifting the Naugatuck River to create more space so that we could fit both of these barrels in here on the west side of the river. So I believe those were the options that we looked at for Route 8. With I-84, again, we looked at replacing it in kind on its alignment. And as we talked at the previous PAC meeting, where we went through the rehab options, maintaining traffic on I-84 is a big challenge. And that came up again when we looked to replace it in kind. Next, we looked at moving I-84 to the north. And again, this would have impacts to some of those districts that are important to the city up on the north side. And we also looked at moving I-84, unstacking it and moving it to the south. So there are impacts that are always part of the consideration within the design team as we're moving these main lines and then having to make the connections with the system ramps. So aside from those alignments with 84, we also looked at some bypass options. And the first bypass option that we looked at, as we zoom out a little bit, would be looking to put 84 in the Washington Street, Washington Avenue corridor. This was something that was looked at. What would happen is the area between 84 and this corridor would become a combined 84 Route 8. And so we'd kind of have a split interchange to make this connection in this area. And then existing I-84 would become more of a business loop or some sort of major arterial to connect back in with the city. Stepping back from this bypass option, we even looked at a broader scale and even looked further to the south, where we'd look to take I-84 from the Middlebury area, looked at an existing utility corridor that was there, moving the core, the interchange there between I-84 and Route 8 way to the south, almost at the Naugatuck border, and then being able to bring 84 back up to the east, going through and across the ridge line before connecting in farther out in the interchange 25 area on 84. And again, existing I-84 would become more of an arterial and a connector. But again, there's lots of impacts with this. And even after this alternate was developed, then you start finding out about other developments that are going on in town, such as that big development that's going on there to the east of Route 8, right down there at the Waterbury-Naugatuck line. But these are bypass options that need to be looked at, and that's what this team did. The next thing that we did look at is we look at a tunneling alternative. This was something that is done at every option. You need to look at, is this possible? What can you do? And again, as we focus back in at the core of the interchange, you can really start to see the verticality here. And this really works against your purpose and need when you're trying to make all of your system connections and improve the deficiencies that were identified. But one thing that could be done for the tunneling alternative, and it's not a true tunnel, this is more of a leave 84 where it is, but put it in a tunnel by building over the top of it to have more developable or community used space. And an area was identified there on the east side running between South Elm and Baldwin as a potential area there. So this is covering the feature of where with the alignment of the main lines. I'll take a quick pause here to see if there are any questions before we get into the next section. Okay, well, the next thing we wanted to talk about was our system connections, whether if we have a full system interchange or a partial system interchange. Oh, Martin, you have a question?
Oh, no, I didn't have any question. I was just concerned about the tunnel and the cost, and, we're trying to get everything done here and in the most efficient way and the most, inexpensive way, if you will, where, it's not really going to cost the taxpayers a lot of money and try to get this done as soon as possible. I understand it's a long process, but if we could look at other alternatives, especially for solar alternatives and things like that, on the highways and byways, that would be great.
Okay, we will, definitely, as you review the alternates as they're sent, as the package is sent to you, I mean, those are comments we'll definitely take into consideration. But I was seeing a hand raised from Martin Begnall.
I think we had the wrong
Oh,
Martin
I'm
there, but
sorry.
no worries,
There's two
Martin.
Martins here. Yeah.
And David,
Sorry.
I think you're about to answer my questions. Obviously, when we're talking about alignment, 8 east or west and 84 north or south, they have to be done in conjunction, right? So if one's going one way, it will impact what happens with the other alignment, right? I mean, I think you're about to answer that right now, so
Well,
I'll let you answer that.
I mean, it's going to impact your system connections. Yes, it will. And as you look through, what we're trying to do is outline these features so that when you do see this package come to you, it'll help you give you a better understanding as we're going through it. But continuing along here with these system connections, I mean, you can have a full system interchange or you can have a partial system interchange. What exists there today is a full system interchange, but at times you can do a partial system interchange. And what a partial system interchange does is it will take a system movement and if conditions are favorable for it, meaning you have lower traffic volume, you have a good local roadway network to support it, you can take this system movement off of the main line, combine it with a frontage road or the local roadway network, and then be able to bring it back up onto the main line that you're looking to make that connection. So we're going to get into this and we're going to explain each one of them here. Now, the full system interchange is what we're going to tackle first. And this is what exists today because we have direct connections from the main line on all 4 quadrants, both going to and from. So we have 8 system connections that are out there today. But some of these are left-handed movements, be either a left-hand exit or a left-hand entrance. So something that was within that when we looked at is we wanted to make sure that these become the right-hand movements, as we had talked about in previous PAC meetings, as this is much safer. It helps our interchange spacing, and it's more meeting in with driver expectancy. So what you'll see as you look through these alternates, you'll see 3 types of these direct connections that we made. And we'll go through them one at a time: the crossover interchange, a combined system movement, and a diverging diamond interchange type movement. So first off with the crossover interchange, a good example of this really to talk about is to think about the Route 8 southbound movement to I-84 eastbound. This is a left-hand off and then a left-hand entrance onto I-84 eastbound. So it is a bit of a difficult maneuver and there are speed differentials and it's not, it's not the safest condition. So what we'd be looking to do is employ what we're calling a crossover interchange type movement, where what we would do is we would take the movement off of Route 8 on the right-hand side to exit it where you would normally expect to exit. We'd have to cross either over or under I-84 and Route 8 before we could come back up on the right-hand side of I-84 to enter I-84 eastbound on the right-hand side. So that's what we're calling a crossover interchange. So have an understanding of that as you're going through these alternates. The next movement that we looked at and want to explain is a combined system movement. This is where if your traffic volumes are favorable and other conditions are met, you could combine your system movements, such as what we look at here, just to help explain this, is if we took the Route 8 southbound and the Route 8 northbound system movements that are going to 84 west, okay? And if we exited those from Route 8 and then we combine them into one roadway before we combined it with I-84 westbound. What this would do then is give us only one entrance point onto 84 westbound rather than consecutive entrance points from both southbound and northbound, meaning we'd still have to maintain our interchange spacing where those 2 points would come in. If we combine them, we can get a little bit shorter of a distance with our interchange spacing, and we'd only have one point of entrance onto the other main line. Likewise, with the exiting, with the entering combined system movements, we could also do combined exiting system movement. So what we would look at here, and what you will see in these alternates, is we may take both the movements to Route 8, both northbound and southbound, off of 84 westbound as a combined exit, so that both of these movements would come off at one point on 84 westbound, and then they would diverge and head both to northbound and to southbound. So again, it kind of reduces your points of intersection on a main line and gets you separation before you separate again. A quick example of this, there really isn't a local one here, but if you think of, if you've ever traveled I-91 north to where it intersects with Route 9, the exit ramp takes both the the Route 9 north and southbound traffic, and it goes a few hundred feet, maybe 500, 600, 700, 800 feet, and then it will diverge again into both north and southbound. So that's just kind of a feature that we looked at as we went through these alternates. Now, the last one that we're going to look at, and really what we want to focus on, is the component of this diverging diamond interchange. A full diverging diamond interchange between I-84 and Route 8 is not possible here in Waterbury. Topography works against us. The traffic volumes work against us also. But there are certain system movements that we could pull off of the highway, and as we're making these connections, and what this diverging diamond does, and it's a little, it's a newer feature that has come along in the last 20 or 30 years. We don't have many here in the United States. There are some, but what this does is this puts traffic, so you have a bit of contraflow. So it puts you to the left side of the roadway where we're used to traveling on the right. And the reason for this, if you follow the purple line, so you just imagine that you're coming off, you come off the highway on the right-hand side, you come down to an intersection. In our case, with these alternates, it would be with another system movement. So you'd have the one traffic signal, where then each one would be on, would switch to the opposite side, or would be coming back to the normal side of the roadway. But then what that allows is it allows an easy entry from the left to flow in, eliminating a traffic signal for that. And then also, as at the top there, as the purple is bending off to the left, you are making a free flow movement to the main line that you want to get to without waiting at a traffic light for a protected left turn arrow so you can make that movement. So it's just something to think about. But what this feature does, again, is just to allow some more free flow movements and eliminate some traffic signals. Now, we weren't, as I stated, we weren't allowed, we weren't able to do this for the full interchange, but with some of the system movements, we were able to incorporate this feature within the alternates. So that is covering the full system interchange. Now, for our partial system interchange, this is what I had talked about, where we make a more of an indirect connection, where we would come off of the main line, get down on the local level, and then be able to combine with the local roadway network, traverse a set distance, and then be able to get back up onto the main line. Now, for these partial system connections or these indirect connections, there have to be features in place. You have to have lower traffic volumes. You have to have the good roadway network to support this movement. And we were able to identify 3 within the interchange that could possibly meet these criteria, and it was looked at with some of the alternates. This is I-84 eastbound, both to Route 8 northbound and to Route 8 southbound. And then we also looked at Route 8 northbound to I-84 westbound. The other advantage to these indirect connections is that if it is a direct connection, sometimes there's an awful lot of structure that goes with that system movement, which then means that there is the cost to build that bridge and then the cost to maintain that bridge over the life of that ramp is in place. So those are all considerations that were taken in while we looked at this feature and incorporating that in these alternates. So with that, that is covering what we had on the interchange, whether if it's a full system interchange or a partial system interchange on those features that you will see when you look through the alternates. So I'll take a quick pause now before we get into the local connectivity. All right. As far as the local connectivity, this is a very important feature of all the main lines and the interstate system, is how the interstate connects with the local community and how the local community connects back up with the main lines to be able to get where they want to go. So what's very important with the local connectivity is the service interchanges that you have, and then how you improve these. And the way that you can improve these is through arterial improvements on the local roadway network or improving those intersections down on the local level. One thing that needs to get done up on the main lines is you need to increase your interchange spacing. As we've noted as a deficiency throughout with this interchanges, we have very closely spaced interchanges. And a lot of that is how tight our service interchanges are to our service ramps. So we have that short distance where there's a lot of weaving, merging and diverging for the drivers. So a way that we increase that interchange spacing is then either introducing a collector distributor road or a frontage roadway system to really assist the local level. Now, a sample of a collector distributor road is right there in Waterbury on the eastern side of the city in the eastbound direction, where exit 23 comes off of I-84 eastbound. It essentially forms a collector distributor roadway. This is still a limited access highway. It pretty much parallels the roadway that you're looking to in that direction. But you take your movements off of the main line. So your main line carries more through traffic, and onto the collector distributor roadway, you put your service ramps or your service interchanges. In this case, we have the one coming from McMahon Street. We also have another entrance ramp from Baldwin. And then we have our exit ramp at exit 30, which leads down to Washington Street, Route 69, and the Brass Mill. And then your collector distributor roadway will continue on and eventually connect back in with the main line from which it's separated. But again, the collector distributor roadway is a limited access highway. So as the design team looked at it, we may not have used the collector distributor roadway as much in doing these alternates. One thing that we did look at were frontage roads. And these often parallel the main line, but they bring you down to the local level. You will have signalized intersections, but these frontage roadways will have a little bit higher speed, and they will connect you in with your commercial and residential properties more readily. A good example of this is right here past exit 23, and this is exit 25, where it comes off. You have your signalized intersection with Harper Ferry Road, and then it leads you further east, and it gets you direct connections to these commercial properties before it brings you back up to your signalized intersection with Scott Road. More connections to the residential and other commercial properties, and then allows you access back onto I-84 eastbound. Another example of the frontage roads that exists out there today is along Route 8. If you look to the south, you look at Charles Street and South Leonard is what we're focusing on here, but these pretty much parallel Route 8, and in effect, they carry these work off of exit 30, But then if you look at it, these frontage roads actually carry further to the north as Riverside Street, both northbound and southbound, and into Watertown Avenue before they combine back together. But those also act as frontage roads, or what we call one-way pairs, because you will have a one-way roadway in one direction on one side of the main line and a one-way roadway on the other side of the highway in the opposite direction. But again, these frontage roads have a lot of local connectivity, and they prove very beneficial for the city on the east side. So that's something that the design team looked at as we went through these. So, and in order to help out and utilize these features that we've talked about, it's important to improve the interchange spacing, as this is going to help meet the purpose and needs of our project. So one thing that we've been looking at, and you will notice this as you go through the alternates, is we've looked at moving exit 18 further to the west. And then also in the eastbound direction, we'd move exit 21 and exit 22 out to the west. And then in the westbound direction, we look at moving exit 21 to the east. So what this does, and then you also take exit 30 and we move that to the south. We move the northern half of exit 30 to match up with the southern half of exit 30 to the south. Now, all of a sudden, we're moving our interchanges to the perimeter of the city, but we're picking up our ramps and or our frontage roads to help carry that traffic and bring it into and out of the city, and also improve the connections. More in the east-west direction we're focusing on here, but also improving the ones that we have in the north-south direction. So as we're looking at where these frontage roads would be, you'll see some of them paralleling down along south of I-84. We also see one coming in the north direction, in the west direction, north of I-84. And then we'll also see, what also comes of this is we are looking at a fifth crossing of the Naugatuck River within the vicinity of the interchange. Presently, there are only 4 of those crossings. The team identified a deficiency, and we got a 5th crossing of the river in this area. And then likewise, the existing frontage roads, both in the southbound, northbound direction that exist today, we'd be looking to enhance or improve those as we went along. So in closing, things to look at when you're going through these alternates in that package that's going to be sent to you is to think about the alignments of both your main lines, both I-84 and Route 8. You can look at the features that we employed with making our system interchange, whether if it's a full system interchange or partial, and how most of these were tried to be moved to the right-hand sides. And then also look at the improvements that were made by the team with the local connectivity, employing, helping out our interchange spacing to make the core of the interchange safer for traffic, and then also to improve those local roadway networks, to improve that connectivity. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Naomi, and then I guess we'll get into some questions after she does a quick recap.
Yeah, thank you, David. And just right before we get into the question portion of this presentation, because I'm sure there's many, I just wanted to wrap this up and just reiterate and remind everyone that we are really in this very early conceptual level of engineering. We are putting ideas down to paper. As our study progresses, these alternatives will become more defined, we'll have more information, and everything will become more clear. These concepts and these features are flexible. As you look at the packet that you'll get with the full concepts, you can identify those features that are complementary, so those that fit in with all other potential concepts. Favorable aspects can be added and favorable aspects can be subtracted. We're really not set in stone at this moment. Everything is on the table at this point in time. As we go through our screening process, those alternatives that are deemed unreasonable or fatally flawed will be screened out, but we're not quite there yet at this point in time. We were just trying to figure out any potential solution for the mixed master in this area. And again, we've developed these concepts through the identification of our constraints, our analysis needs and deficiencies report, design standards, both state and federal, understanding the program needs and the needs of the community, and with input from not only our team of experts, but also our PAC and the public and stakeholders and other members of the community. And with that, we have been trying to determine this evaluation criteria that will continue to develop as we go into our screening process. And again, all of these items that we've just identified and gone through will be added to this funnel here. We're not quite at the level 1 process yet. The next meeting will go into that criteria, but all of these universe of alternatives, all of these alternatives will go through this process of screening. So with that, I'll open the floor to any questions. Please raise your hand. If you have any questions, feel free to add them to the chat as well. We can I go through and try to explain these features in more detail. If you don't feel comfortable talking now, feel free to email the project team and we will respond to those questions as well. So I'll take a second here to see if anything comes up. Okay, Julia, I see your name. Your hand is raised.
Yeah, hi there. This is Julia Rogers with the Housatonic Valley Association. And I was just curious to know if there were any intentions to present these alternatives to the public and to host a public hearing associated with them.
So thank you, Julia. Yes, we will have a public information meeting. That meeting is anticipated to be in June at this point in time. That first meeting will be just an introduction to our study, introduction to our Pell study process. So the PAC is a little bit ahead of the public at this point in time, but the public will definitely get a chance to see these alternatives, provide their input, provide their perspective as well, and get a better idea of what we're looking at. We will not make any screening decisions before getting to the public. So I do want to make that clear. We need to make sure we get public input before making any screening decisions. So thank you, and hopefully that answers your question. Mark, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, good morning. Mark Nielsen with NBCOG. Just a lot to digest.
Yes.
That's the first comment. It's one thing, looking at all these little lines on the maps and really trying to figure out what they all mean. But I guess my first reaction to some of the frontage road types of concepts that using sort of the existing, roads and that go through, residential neighborhoods or business neighborhoods, just to be aware that we can't be adding a burden to those areas at the, to benefit, the movement on 284 and Route 8. So, hopefully, I'm sure you are, is to make sure that any kind of frontage road system, that uses, especially, something like South Leonard Street or, the other one on the other side, aren't creating greater impact on some of those neighborhoods that are overburdened as it is.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that perspective. As our Pell study progresses, as we get into the second level of screening, because we are going through 3 levels of screening, we'll look at those impacts in greater detail than we are at the first level, but we'll definitely be taking all of that into consideration as we begin to screen and hopefully find a reasonable alternative for the mixed master interchange. So thank you. Okay, I'm not
Naomi,
seeing.
I'll chime in here.
Okay. Yep.
I'm wondering if anyone from the city perhaps has a perspective on the potential alignments for Route 8, 84. Doesn't have to be anything definitive, but just reactions or feedback would be welcome at this point.
It's Bob from City Planning. I would share the same concern that was just raised. We're really dealing with a very confined corridor today, and any concept of overburdening neighborhoods, routing traffic, increasing traffic, that's I think fair to say would impact negatively our neighborhoods is not desirable. I think you could almost argue that it could be potentially repeating some of the mistakes of the 1950s to be kind of going down that road.
Yeah, no, and Bob, but we were very cognizant of that, and we're trying to keep these frontage roads, in tight 284, because we saw a big need in the east-west direction,
Yeah.
particular so that we could connect, to get across the river, connect in with the Jackson Street area, in between the river and the railroad, was a focus for us.
Yeah.
And then in the north-south direction, we wanted to maintain and or improve, Charles and South Leonard to Riverside to Watertown. We saw, there's more residences down to the south. As it got closer to the core, there weren't many residences or businesses there. But we saw this as an area to improve there in the north-south direction, but really to focus getting that movement in the east-west so that we're taking that 35% of the vehicles that were identified in the origin destination study that's using the interchange to get across the city. We want to help keep them at the local level, but your concerns and Mark's are very well noted, and it's something that the team did take into consideration.
Yeah, we also recognize this is the painter's brush approach that we're at right now. We're not down to the fine point pen, but I think it's a basic principle to keep in mind as we move forward. We recognize that certainly refinement is we'll be moving forward.
Thanks. Thank you, Bob. And I do want to add to that note that with some of these improvements, we are attempting to reduce congestion, and that will improve, some of the, air quality and other aspects that are being negatively impacted because of the congestion that currently occurs out there. So if we are able to allow traffic to move a little bit more freely, but, with other areas in mind, we're hoping to relieve that burden of the air quality and other impacts that are negatively affecting these neighborhoods that are around this project corridor. We hope to make that improvement so that there are improvements to those environmental factors as well.
Naomi, we've got a question from Martin Begnell. Martin?
Hi, yeah, I want to be reserve judgment, like Bob had just said. I realize we are early on, but actually, I'm a bit cautiously optimistic. I don't know what the traffic would look like if Riverside Street were to become a frontage road. Does that get it at 40 or 50 miles an hour? I mean, so because I know Reedville Drive on the east is a long straightaway, but anyway, again, not knowing what that becomes of that is a question. But right now, when we're pulling out of Riverside Cemetery, there was a major bridge abutment just to the north of our entrance, and you literally take your life into your hands when you're pulling out of there. So if that is improved, that would be great for us. And I'm also cautiously optimistic of this concept of moving 8 east. That would be the ideal situation for us. And if 8 is east and 84 is south, and I do believe there's plenty of space there to connect those that make the interchange there. Again, not an engineer, but again, not knowing what the frontage road would look like, but hoping that it could actually serve to our benefit. I guess I'm just throwing that out there now.
And Martin, one thing to point out is that, I mean, just because a frontage road can have different sort of connotations. I mean, it doesn't mean that the speed is definitely going to go, up on that roadway. It just means that, we're looking that as, maintaining the north-south connectivity that's providing today is really what we're focusing on with that. But as we get more into it, I mean, I'm sure there'll be more that'll come up and more discussions on that. But yes, your concerns are noted on that.
And David, and I don't want to read tea leaves to your presentation, but again, I was hearing that 8 east and 84 south seems a viable of all the alternatives, that is a viable alternative at this point.
When you look at the alternates, and I mean, like we've been saying all along, I mean, we're not at the point of screening stuff out, but as you will see that how the alternates shake out, that the design team may have focused a little bit more in that direction, just for constructability and for all the other, meeting the goals and objectives and the purpose and needs for the project. So yes, you review the alternates, and you can weigh in at the next PAC meeting, or you can send us an email and tell us what you think of your tea leaves.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and thank you, Martin. And I do want to note, we are very early in this process. As we move forward and begin the screening process, we do have to take into consideration not only the constructability aspect of reconstructing the interchange, but also as David mentioned, our purpose, needs, goals, and objectives as well. Keeping in mind that we want to be in line with the city's, not in line, but just cognizant of the city's goals and objectives and their plans, the community's goals and objectives and plans. We need to take everything into consideration as we begin and go through this screening process, because this is a very small and tight area, and there's a lot that we are dealing with and looking at. So we're looking to find, the most reasonable solution. I keep saying that, a range of reasonable solutions. It's not going to be perfect. There are going to be impacts, but right now we're just looking at everything.
Brian Peterson, you've got your hand raised in Zoom.
Yeah, no, I just want to add the fact that maybe we're all looking at the Reedville Drive and Leonard Street that we know today, and maybe it can be much more improved, in the future.
Yeah, David, can you speak to that? Have we investigated opportunities for types of improvements on those specific roads?
Oh, I don't think we've gone down to that sort of detail, but I mean, we do see the potential and the advantages for those roadways. So it's something we definitely look to improve whatever we could. Yes.
All right. Any other feedback, aspects of these parts of alternatives that you may have found interesting or confusing? We're in a unique situation where we're not running up against the time limit for our PAC meeting. We do have some time, or we could adjourn early.
Okay. Well, as PAC, oh, Martin, I see your hand is raised.
If you're asking for questions, I'll throw it out there. So what happens next? So you have your 17 alternatives and the realignment, possibilities and universes. So what do you guys do next? How does this proceed from your end?
Yeah, if there are no more questions, I will, because I will get into that briefly. But I do want to mention that when you all get that packet of the universe of alternatives, we are asking for any type of questions, even if you come up with a unique solution yourself that you may think may work. The door is, all options are on the table. We don't know how the interchange will look in the future quite yet. So we are looking for input from the PAC members, the public, anyone who has any ideas. We would welcome that input and insight. I'll go back a slide just so I can answer your question, Martin, before we move on. So this is the Pell process for the screening of alternatives. So we'll take into consideration, we'll look at our alternatives and we'll screen them against evaluation criteria that we'll develop. The next meeting will present to you our level 1 screening criteria, which will be mainly engineering based, because that is we're at such a high level and conceptual level. We don't know how these alternatives will, impact the environment quite yet. And we are really just identifying and dismissing unreasonable alternatives through this process. So we'll take the universe, we'll take our screening criteria, and items that are alternatives that are fatally flawed or are deemed unreasonable will be screened out. Each level of screening becomes more detailed. We'll have more information. We'll have a better understanding of potential solutions, and we'll go through this process. And at the end, we'll come out with a range of reasonable alternatives, and we're also calling this Pell recommendations. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I'll elaborate on that a little bit more, Naomi, too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, making decisions and screening down this universe, Martin, at each of these levels, it's going to be based on objective criteria or rules that part of this project advisory committee's function is to help define. In the first round, in the first level of screening, it's going to be pretty cut and dry. Is it feasible? Is it practical? Does it meet the purpose of the project? As we go through the progressive rounds, maybe it becomes a little bit more subjective as to how alternatives get screened out. And we're expecting that PAC members are going to have input and feedback that help shape the methodology that we use to screen out alternatives for further study. That is the intent.
But the immediate future is you're going to get a packet that will show we'll show the alternate on a PDF or an 11x17. If you can quote me if I'm wrong, Naomi, plus also a description of what's taking place with that alternate. So you're able to take the features that we described today and everything else we've been talking about at these PAC meetings and start to see, okay, this is that alternate. You can really take a good hard look at what's on the paper, and then you can ask your questions of what's down there, or have your own opinions on them. And that's the feedback we'd be looking at. But That's what's going to take place later today, is Naomi's going to send those alternates out to you.
Yep.
Well, thank you for that, all three of you, for answering that question. At the June public meeting, will the public be presented something similar to what we saw today? Is that what we can expect in June?
So since the PAC members are ahead of the public, we will be at that first public meeting, we will be going through our PAC milestones 1 and 2. So we will provide an introduction and an overview of the existing conditions, the deficiencies that we have identified, and the purpose and need that we have, the preliminary purpose and need that we have developed thus far. At that meeting, we'll be asking for input to see if we can incorporate anything into those initial Pell documents. Similar to, what we were asking about at the last meeting, we really want to get PAC members' input before we go to the public. If there is anyone who has, any perspective on these initial Pell documents, we would like to get that in formally so that we can begin to present this information to the public and then begin our screening process as well. The second public meeting, which we're still trying to identify a good date for that. At that second public meeting, it will be similar to this meeting where we'll be presenting the third PAC milestone. So that means our universe of alternatives and the level 1 screening criteria and getting input on that. We will be sending out notifications for surveys to get public input that way as well, to go online and provide perspective on the existing conditions and other needs that members of the public may believe are pertinent to this project. So the public will get an opportunity to look at all of the materials that we have all gone through as a group. They are a little bit behind, but we are going to bring them up to speed so that they have a good understanding of the universe of alternatives and the level 1 screening evaluation criteria before we make the screening decisions. PAC members, you PAC members,
Okay, thank you. I will.
ahead. Yeah.
And that's understandable. I mean, we sat through all these presentations. But I will give you guys a heads up that Julie and I went to a Waterbury Neighborhood Council meeting to let them know this was underway and that you guys were doing this and we were attending these meetings. And people in Waterbury have a lot of opinions and a lot of strong opinions about the Mixmaster. So just be prepared that you will probably get more feedback at that meeting than you're getting from us.
Thank you. No, that's great. That's
on these
honestly,
calls.
that's really what we're looking for. We want the public to be engaged. We want that perspective. We want that input. That's really great news. So I really appreciate you all getting the word out. All of this information is public. It's on our website, so anyone can access it. They can watch these videos. That's really great. So thank you. And we will be sending out newsletters and news blasts as well, coordinating with the city and directly with getting the word out for our public meeting very, very soon. So thank you for that information, and that's really good news because we do want that public input.
And I will also say that I will expect a phone call from a reporter in the next week or two to kind of walk up to that meeting.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay. If there are not any more questions, I'll sum up these concluding slides and talk about the next steps. The slide I'm sharing right now is just a reminder that we are asking for PAC input and comments on these initial Pell documents. The initial due date was May 2nd. That was this upcoming Monday, but I have not received anything from anyone thus far. And I really want to make sure that I give you all the opportunity to give your comments and input through this method. And so as a project team, we've decided to extend the due date for 2 more weeks. So May 16th will be the date where we will be asking and for you all to finish providing your comments on behalf of your organizations or communities that you represent on May 16th. And we'll take that into consideration when we move forward and give our presentation to the public on these initial documents, the analysis needs and deficiency report, which has these existing conditions review and the identification of deficiencies, and then our preliminary purpose and need statement, which has the purpose, our needs, and the goals and objectives that we have gone through and identified as a group as well. Also on this calendar, you will see that the next PAC meeting is on the 23rd of May. That is 1 week before the Memorial Day. So please just make note of that. It's on the 23rd. It will likely be around the same time, midday. And at that meeting, we will be going through, we'll be asking for your input on the universe of alternatives, getting your perspective, and then concluding that meeting with an introduction of the level 1 screening criteria and getting your input on that screening criteria as well. So Julia, I do see a question from Julia. She asked if we could get a general schedule of when we expect to have the PAC meetings for the next 3 to 4 months. I think that's something we can do. Right now, they have been on a monthly basis trying to bring everyone up to speed and allow enough time to have these discussions to explain this process in a little bit more detail. As we are getting into the summer and summer months and attempting to bring the public up to speed with where the PAC is, that we may not meet at some point in time, but we'll take a look at our schedule. We may have a break in like June or July over the summer, just so that we have time to bring everyone up to speed. But we can provide you with an anticipated schedule for that. And then again, this is, we've gone through our PAC meeting 3A and 3B, which was today. Our next meeting is May 23rd. And again, we're looking to review that universe of alternatives, get input, provide you that introduction to the screening criteria, and then get input from all of you. And with that, I'll ask if there are any remaining
I like
questions.
something. Yeah, Martin
Yes.
Spring, Waterville Community Club.
Hi, Martin.
Yeah, I was muted for a while, and it's really hard for me to talk here because of my computer. I agree with Marty Bagno. He came to the Waterbury Neighborhood Council, which I'm a member of. And also, I'd like to know, when are you guys going to have this open to the public? I know because of COVID and everything, but it would be nice if you pick one of the high schools in a really good location, that would be accommodating for a lot of people to come and give them ample notice so, we can all attend these meetings. Because like Marty said, I don't want to repeat it, but there's a lot of people with a lot of strong feelings about this, especially, around here in Waterbury, in the Brooklyn section too, which they are also members of the Waterbury Neighborhood Council too.
Martin, were a lot of the people who had strong opinions also hoping to have an in-person public information component?
Right.
They were.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, when you're going to have that in-person meeting, and if you do, maybe you could pick one of the high schools here in Waterbury that's more accommodating for the people to come to and participate. That's all I'm saying. In the future.
Yeah, thank you for that, Martin. And so we're continuing to monitor that whole situation with the, the pandemic and obviously the numbers, for the virus. So, we'll continue to do that as we move forward. Right now, we haven't been fully cleared for in-person public meetings. So that's through the Department of Transportation. We're still holding virtual meetings for now. We do plan to probably move to a hybrid situation in the future, but for right now, we're still doing all virtual. So, we do intend at some point when things get a little better, and we feel that we can get everybody together safely to do that.
Right, and I appreciate that, sir, but I just want to let you know a little bit of emphasis. It would be an ideal place to have one of the high schools, that are close by that people could participate. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, we'll look at various venues within the city that, will accommodate any persons with, need for accommodations, ADA compliance and all that. So, would like.
Okay, thank you, sir. I do appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thanks, Mark.
And with our public process, I do want to note that there will be a public notice issued, and that public notice will be about 30 days minimum, published 30 days minimum ahead of our public information meeting. So there should be about a month between the issuance of that public notice and when our public meeting will be. So hopefully that will, provide everyone enough time to get the word out so that people can attend. There will be a survey as well to capture some of that input and perspective, to get a better understanding of the opinions that the general public has. So again, thank you all for letting us know about that. We're really excited to begin that process and to begin our communication with the general public. And PAC members, you all have helped shape how we are approaching the public with all this information. So we really appreciate that and appreciate all of the meetings that you have sat through with us and all the bunch of information that we've given you thus far. So greatly appreciate it. Okay, I'll ask if there are any, additional questions before we end here. We have about 7 more minutes scheduled for this meeting. So I'll pause just to capture any remaining.
Naomi, just to follow along those lines. Again, my name is Neil Patel with the DOT. For all the PAC members, in terms of getting the word out for the public meeting, we've got a pretty robust plan. I think that we're gonna issue here to get the word out. But if there are any other recommendations from PAC members in terms of neighborhood meetings that you have and you can get the word out, please let us know, if we can help with that. Looks like we got some questions.
Yeah, Martin, I see your hands raised.
Yeah, I didn't know if this is the right time in the process for this to take place. But as you well are aware of, that we are a National Register historic site. Our chapel is right there on Riverside Avenue in the shadow of the interchange. I've said this before, but my question is, when will a Section 106 study be completed? When does that happen in this process?
Yes, so that will happen when the NEPA process begins. So after the Pell process is over and we've identified the range of reasonable alternatives, it may be 1 alternative, it may be 5 alternatives, it may be more than that. We don't know quite yet, but when that range is found, is figured out, we'll go into that NEPA process, and then we'll get into that more detailed and more rigorous environmental review, where we will be getting that section 106 coordination and like section 4F coordination if there are any impacts to those properties and districts. So that is on the horizon, but since we're very early in this process, it's not for, I generally say like another a year or so.
Oh, okay, thank you, because the DOT didn't do one for the rehab project. We had to call Washington, the federal, and there was no 106 done for the project they're doing now until after we asked for it. So just throwing that out there, that we were a little surprised that that wasn't done initially. There was one completed after we asked, and we're grateful for that, but I just want to make sure that's not forgotten in all this.
Mm-hmm.
Naomi,
Yes.
if I may, our organization, Waterbury Neighborhood Council, I know there is some concern, especially acquiring land, whether it be east, west, south, whatever, how that will impact private homes and obviously businesses. That seems to be a big concern, and obviously the on and off exits into downtown Waterbury. So obviously we could keep that in mind going forward.
Yes, thank you, Art. That is definitely, that is part of our review process here during Pell, and then it will definitely be looked at in more detail when we transition into the NEPA process as well, an economic review study and how any potential change from existing conditions could potentially affect, the surrounding community, is something that we look at during our study and review.
Yeah, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And I do want to know all of the information that we look at will be documented and consolidated into a report, which will be public facing. So anyone from the public will be able, once that information is developed and put into a report, that will be put on our public website, on our project website, for anyone to review and parse through. So when the time comes, it will be available to everyone. And I did see that Brian Peterson, you did have your hand raised at one point. Do you have a question?
No, I'm just going to say if it's going to be in Zoom and all, that people should be encouraged to get together, because not everyone has Zoom on their computers and all that, and they could feel like they're left out or something if they can't somehow, team up with somebody. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
And Naomi, I mean, we will probably plan to have a call-in option, I think, right?
Yes, there will be a call-in option for the public information meeting as well. Whether or not there be similar to how we do our PAC meetings, where I send out a PDF presentation so people can follow along, that will likely be an option as well for our public meetings too. Okay, we are coming on to the end of our presentation. And again, I do want to just thank everyone for their time, your input, your perspective. All of it is very appreciated. We will be meeting next month, and I'm looking forward to whatever I receive from anyone. All input, all insight is going to get documented and taken into consideration. So thank you again for spending this time with us. Feel free to email myself or anyone on the project team if you have any questions. We'll be sure to get to you in a timely manner. And with that, I'll conclude the meeting. So thank you all.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye.
very much. I
Great.
do appreciate it.
Everyone.
Thank you. Have a great weekend, everyone. Enjoy the weather.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for your
Thank you,
time.
everyone.